A civilian helicopter landed on a French prison roof, and a man serving 30 years ran straight into it. Luines had towers, sensors, and electrified fences, but nothing aimed upward. The entire extraction was over in less than 2 minutes of chaos. Guards had protocols for tunnels, riots, and walls. They had none for the sky. The prisoner was Pascal Payet, and this impossible escape hinted at something even worse. No one yet understood how far he was prepared to take it. Before the prison, before the helicopters, before the legend, there was simply a man who understood how the underworld worked. Pascal Payet grew up in the rough edges of southern France, pulled into the criminal networks that operated between Marseille and the Côte d'Azur. This was not petty theft. This was organized crime. Armed robberies executed with split-second timing, getaway routes memorized down to the turn. And a crew that trusted each other because the alternative was a prison cell or a shallow grave. Payet had earned his place in this world through a single quality that mattered more than ruthlessness. He was reliable. He showed up. He followed the plan. He kept his mouth shut. In the underworld of Provence, that made him invaluable. The robberies escalated. The targets got bigger. The risks multiplied. And eventually the odds caught up. The courtroom in Aix-en-Provence was austere. Wooden benches, flags behind the judges, fluorescent light. Pascal Payet stood in the dock and listened to the verdict. Armed robbery. Complicity in murder. 30 years. That is not a sentence. That is a slow death. He would enter prison as a young man and emerge if he survived as an old one. The world outside would continue without him. His network would dissolve. His contacts would forget. 30 years was not a pause. It was an erasure. Most men, hearing that number, would grieve. Some would rage. A few would plan. Pascal Payet planned. One mistake in those coded messages could end everything before the plan even existed. If staff decoded one letter, Payet lost his network, his outside ally, and his only path out. From his cell in Luines, Payet maintained contact with the outside world through coded letters and carefully rationed phone calls. Unlike most inmates, he had something that mattered, a network that still functioned. Associates who owed him, people who remembered his reliability. And one critical ally, a man on the outside willing to organize what Payet could not do alone. The idea did not come instantly. It grew slowly, over months, during the monotony of the exercise yard. The walls were 12 feet high and topped with razor wire. The gates required electronic authorization. The guard towers covered every angle at ground level. But one afternoon, walking the yard, Payet stopped. He looked up. No razor wire above him. No cameras pointing at the sky. No nets, no cables, no barriers. The most secure prison in the region had built its defenses in every direction except one. Up, finding the blind spot inside Luines was only phase one of the escape. What came next would be harder, turning open sky into a precise extraction route. Pascal Payet didn't need a tunnel. He didn't need a disguise. He didn't need to overpower a guard or pick a lock. He needed a helicopter. The plan required three things: a helicopter, a crew willing to commit a felony, and a pilot willing or not. Payet's outside contact was a man known in the investigation files as Franck. A figure from the same Marseille networks who had the connections to assemble a team for an operation of this scale. We need a bird, and we need someone who can fly it, whether he wants to or not. Franck's task list was extraordinary. He needed to identify a helicopter charter service in the Provence region. He needed to book a flight under a false name, a sightseeing tour, anything that would get a helicopter in the air without suspicion. He needed armed men willing to hijack the aircraft mid-flight and redirect it to a prison. And he needed to do all of this without leaving a trail. The crew came together over weeks. 2 men who would ride in the helicopter, 1 driver waiting at the landing zone, and 1 unwitting participant, the pilot. The helicopter could not be purchased, too traceable. It could not be stolen from an airfield, too visible. The solution was elegant in its brutality. Rent the helicopter through a legitimate booking, then hijack it once airborne. The pilot would become a hostage. His skills would become theirs. If the pilot panicked or radioed a warning, the operation would collapse before Payet reached the roof. From inside Luynes, Payet fed information outward through the coded communication chain. He had studied the guard rotation schedules with the patience of an engineer. He knew which shifts had the fewest officers on the upper levels. He knew the timing windows when the rooftop access corridors were unwatched. He understood wind patterns, the prevailing mistral that determined helicopter approach angles over the compound. Every detail was communicated in fragments, never the full plan in one message. That was phase 1, building a route into the sky. What came next would be a countdown measured in seconds.
The morning shift.
The date was set. A quiet weekday. Shift changes at the prison created a brief window, less than 3 minutes, when the upper levels had minimal coverage.
Confirmation sequence.
The helicopter would arrive during that window. Payet would reach the roof. The extraction would take less than 2 minutes. Frank confirmed from the outside. The helicopter was booked. The crew was armed. The pilot had been selected, a civilian charter operator who believed he was flying 3 men on a scenic tour of the Provençal countryside. He had no idea where he was actually going. The morning began like every other morning at Luynes. Roll call at 7, breakfast in the cell block. Inmates shuffled to the exercise yard. Pascal Payet ate his breakfast. He walked to the yard. He did not look up. He did not do anything to distinguish this day from the 300 that had come before it. Inside, his heart was counting minutes. Payet had less than 3 minutes before the shift window closed and the roof filled with guards. 30 kilometers away, a helicopter lifted off from a regional airfield. The pilot, a civilian charter operator in his 40s, had 3 passengers. They had booked a sightseeing flight over the Provençal countryside. They were polite. They wore casual clothes. One carried a small duffel bag. 5 minutes into the flight, the bag opened. A weapon appeared. "You can't be serious. Those coordinates, that's a prison." The pilot's voice cracked. The man sitting behind him pressed the weapon closer and repeated the GPS coordinates. The pilot's hands shook on the cyclic. He banked the helicopter south. The aircraft crossed the hills north of Aix-en-Provence, descending. Below, the compound of Luynes prison materialized, gray walls, guard towers, the exercise yard, and the flat, empty, undefended rooftop. The guards heard the helicopter before they saw it. At first, the sound registered as background noise. Helicopters occasionally passed over the area. But this one was getting louder. Too loud. Too close. "That helicopter, it's heading straight for us. Get units to the roof. Now." The helicopter descended toward the flat rooftop. No barriers. No nets. No cables. The landing was clean. The pilot, despite his terror, was a professional. The skids touched concrete. The rooftop access door opened. Pascal Payet appeared. He ran, fast, low, arms pumping across the flat concrete toward the waiting aircraft. An accomplice in the cabin reached out and grabbed his arm. Payet was hauled aboard. The helicopter lifted. The entire extraction from touchdown to departure took less than 2 minutes. By the time the first guard reached the rooftop stairs, the helicopter was already clearing the perimeter wall. The helicopter set down in a field 10 kilometers from the prison. The pilot was released, shaken, terrified, but unharmed. Payet stripped off the orange jumpsuit, changed into civilian clothes, and vanished. Within 2 hours, he was in Marseille. Within 6 hours, he was untraceable. The criminal underground had swallowed him whole. France woke up the next morning to a headline that read like fiction. A convicted armed robber had escaped a maximum security prison by helicopter. The embarrassment was total. The manhunt was immediate. This escape was only phase 1. What came next would expose a national prison failure. But the worst part, the part the authorities didn't yet understand, was that Pascal Payet was just getting started. The search for Pascal Payet became one of the largest manhunts in recent French criminal history. Roadblocks went up across Provence. Every known associate was placed under surveillance. Every airfield within 200 kilometers was monitored. Police circulated his photograph to every border post in the country. He didn't climb a wall, he didn't dig a tunnel, he flew out. How do you build a protocol for that? The answer for months was, you don't. Payet had vanished into the Marseille underground. A world of safe houses, false identities, and loyalty purchased through decades of criminal service. He moved between locations, never staying more than a few days in one place. His network was old, deep, and experienced at hiding people. Eventually, informant intelligence led police to Payet's location. He was recaptured, quietly, without the drama of his departure, and returned to custody. This time, the authorities were confident. He was transferred to a different facility with enhanced rooftop monitoring. The helicopter problem, they believed, had been solved. They were wrong. That had been phase one of the crisis inside France's prison system. What came next would be worse, because Payet would export the method instead of simply using it. In 2003, something unprecedented happened. Pascal Payet, back behind bars but never idle, orchestrated a helicopter raid on a different prison. Not to escape himself, to free others. He could have kept his head down. He could have served his time quietly, grateful for the months of freedom he'd stolen. Instead, he chose to go back, not physically, but operationally. He chose to send a helicopter to another prison to extract 3 men who were still inside. A helicopter was hijacked. It flew to a French prison. It landed on the roof. 3 inmates scrambled aboard and were extracted. 3 men, 1 helicopter, another prison rooftop that had no defenses against an aerial assault. The shock inside the French justice system was seismic. The first helicopter escape could be dismissed as a freak incident. But this was different. This was a pattern. Payet had proven that the vulnerability was systemic. Every prison in France with a flat roof was exposed. He's not just escaping anymore. He's demonstrating a flaw in the entire system. The political fallout was immediate. Questions were raised in Parliament. How was it possible that French prisons could not defend against a helicopter? The media coverage was merciless. The warden of the targeted prison was reassigned. And Pascal Payet? He sat in his cell and waited. The authorities began the transfer dance. Payet was moved between maximum security facilities every few months, never staying in one place long enough to learn the guard rotations. Never in one facility long enough for his outside network to scout the layout. It was expensive. It was disruptive. And it was, the authorities believed, the only way. For 4 years, Pascal Payet was moved, watched, and isolated. The French prison system reorganized itself around the threat of one man. Surely, they believed, the helicopter problem was finally solved. By 2007, authorities had only one defense left: keep Payet moving before his network could adapt. If one transfer cycle failed, another rooftop breach could cost France years of credibility. Then came Bastille Day, France's national holiday, the anniversary of the storming of the Bastille. The prison whose fall symbolized the end of tyranny and the birth of French liberty. Across the country, fireworks lit the sky. Parades filled the boulevards. Champagne corks popped from Paris to Marseille. At Grassy Prison in the hills above the Côte d'Azur, the guards were aware of the date's significance. Enhanced protocols were in place. Pascal Payet was under close observation. Enhanced protocols changed the routine, not the architecture. Grasse still had the same open roof that had failed France twice before. The net was tightening around Payet. Grasse just did not know it yet. Nobody expected anything. The system was confident. The system was wrong again. At an airfield near the coast, 4 armed men approached a helicopter. They did not bother with subtlety this time. There was no fake booking, no sightseeing ruse. They overpowered the flight crew directly. The pilot was given coordinates and told to fly. I know what those coordinates are. That's a prison. You're out of your minds. The pilot flew. The helicopter rose into a sky already bright with celebration. Fireworks erupted across the Côte d'Azur, cascading bursts of gold, red, and blue that lit the darkness in staccato flashes. The concussive thumps of the pyrotechnics mixed with the steady beat of the helicopter rotors until the two sounds became indistinguishable. A guard at Grasse looked up and saw flickering lights in the sky. Some were fireworks, some were aircraft navigation lights, and for a few critical seconds he could not tell the difference. The symbolism was devastating. On the day France celebrated freedom, on the anniversary of a prison's fall, a prisoner was about to fly out of another one. The helicopter descended toward grassy prison. The rooftop was flat, concrete, unobstructed. Despite everything that had happened, despite 2 previous helicopter incidents, there were no cables, no nets, no physical barriers between the roof and the sky. Once the skids touched concrete, Payet had less than 120 seconds before guards converged on the roof. If the pilot hesitated or a door jammed, the escape ended there. Pascal Payet reached the rooftop. The helicopter was there. He climbed aboard. The helicopter lifted. The operation, from approach to departure, took less than 2 minutes. Again. For the 3rd time, a French prison's most dangerous inmate had been extracted by helicopter from an undefended rooftop. For the 3rd time, the guards reached the roof to find nothing but the echo of rotors fading into the night. The cell is empty. He's gone. He's done it again. The news broke on Bastille Day itself. The headlines wrote themselves, "Escaped by helicopter on Bastille Day." The irony was so perfect it seemed scripted. A country celebrating the fall of the Bastille could not keep one man inside its modern prisons. Pascal Payet was free again. But this time, every police force in Europe was looking for him. And this time, there was nowhere left to hide. The international manhunt was swift and total. Interpol issued a red notice. Payet's photograph appeared on screens at every border crossing. Between France and Spain, between Spain and North Africa. His known associates were placed under round-the-clock surveillance. Every airfield, every helicopter charter service, every private landing strip in southern France was monitored. The political pressure demanded results. A convicted armed robber escaping by helicopter once was embarrassing. Twice was a scandal. 3 times on Bastille Day was a crisis of national competence. The net was tightening across 3 countries, and Payet did not see the pattern yet. He had only a few quiet weeks before Spanish police reached his apartment door. Weeks later, Spanish police located Pascal Payet in a quiet coastal town near Barcelona. He had crossed the border and settled into an unremarkable apartment, waiting for the heat to pass. But there was no more patience left. The manhunt had been too intense, the surveillance too wide. When the officers arrived, Payet did not run. He did not fight. He stood in the doorway of his apartment and extended his hands. "You found me. It took long enough." He was returned to France under extraordinary security, armored convoy, helicopter escort. A security detail normally reserved for heads of state. The court added years to his sentence for the escapes and for the 2003 operation that freed 3 other inmates. He was placed on permanent prison rotation, moved between maximum security facilities every few months, never allowed to settle, never given enough time in one place to learn its weaknesses. The cost of maintaining Pascal Payet became a line item in the French prison budget. The constant transfers, the enhanced surveillance, the dedicated security protocols. Keeping one man locked up required resources normally allocated to entire facilities. And then came the cables. After Payet's 3rd helicopter escape, France made a decision that would change the physical architecture of every prison in the country. The arrest ended the chase, but it did not end Payet's effect on France. What followed would outlast every transfer, every escort, and every extra year added to his sentence. France was redesigning prisons because one prisoner had exposed a hole in the entire system. Steel cables and anti-helicopter nets were stretched across exercise yards and rooftops nationwide. The open sky above the prison, the blind spot that Payet had exploited 3 times, was sealed. The policy spread beyond France. Prisons across Europe studied Payet's escapes and installed their own aerial barriers. The 3 inmates extracted in the 2003 raid were recaptured within weeks. The hijacked pilots, civilians caught in the wrong helicopter on the wrong day, were released unharmed in every incident. Payet's accomplices received significant prison sentences of their own. And Pascal Payet sits in a cell that changes address every few months. He has been moved more times than any prisoner in French history. Above every exercise yard he will ever walk, cables stretch across the sky. Barriers that exist because of him. Every prison in France carries the mark of his audacity. He didn't dig a tunnel, he didn't pick a lock, he didn't scale a wall. He simply looked up and found the one direction nobody was watching. 3 prisons, 3 helicopters, 3 escapes. And now, every prison in France has learned to guard the sky. Because one man proved that the most secure facilities in the country had forgotten the simplest truth about cages: they need a ceiling.